She left home telling her parents she'd be spending the night with friends. They assume she left in her white P-Reg Rover 214i. She hasn't been seen since.
Nothing to suggest why she would disappear. She just didn't come home one night.
For today's case, we're in Richmond, North Yorkshire. North Yorkshire is a place of extraordinary natural beauty, sweeping landscapes and friendly locals. And for one of the residents, Jenny Nicholl, life was all about friendship, family and fun. 19-year-old Jenny was someone who loved being out in the country and she adored camping. She was a huge music fan, especially of Jimi Hendrix, and was also in a rock band called No Fouling. They had made a name for themselves and even played at the Richmond Live Music Festival and got to the final of Battle of the Bands in 2002. Jenny worked in a local co-op and was known in and around the local pubs where she would play with her band. She lived with her parents, Anne, a former cleaner, and Brian, a retired army major, on Bolton Avenue, and this is where our case begins. The 30th of June 2005. Jenny was heading out. She didn't say where she was going or who she was seeing. Based on what she took with her, it looked like she was going camping. It wasn't something out of the ordinary, as she would go out with her friends and come back the following day. She said goodbye to Anne, told her she wouldn't be back that night, and off she went. Jenny had arranged to pick her friend up the day after and they were going to be going on a night out, but she never showed up. Her friend tried calling her, but she got no answer. As Monday came and went, Jenny had failed to check in for her shift at work. People were now very worried. 4 days after she left her parents' house, she was reported as a missing person by her mom. Later that day, Anne was out searching, and she found her daughter's white Rover 214i car, parked and abandoned in a local pub car park. A description of Jenny was put out, hoping that someone somewhere might remember something. She was described as slim, 5'6", with green eyes and fair hair down to her shoulders, that she would often wear in a ponytail. She was last seen wearing blue jeans, black trainers and a sleeveless crop top, and a khaki hooded parka that she wore often. Hundreds of posters were distributed, appealing to the public to come forward with any sightings of her. All they needed, as with most cases, was one tiny break. A few days after her disappearance, Anne and Brian went to the Sandbeck plantation to search for her. And it was here that they made a discovery. They found her cosmetics and a nightdress partially hidden underneath the leaves. Her friend said that Jenny was not forthcoming with things, and wouldn't talk to or confide in people, keeping things to herself, so the police were certainly going to have their work cut out for them. The search efforts continued and the police were going door to door to try and get the wider picture in focus. On the 6th of July, they said they were becoming extremely worried for her welfare, and the next day an incident room was established at Richmond Police Station, and 20 officers were put on the case. Knowing that she was well known in the pubs, the police spread out to talk to those who frequented those places, to see if they knew anything that could be of help. On the 10th of July, Detective Inspector Pete Martin, who was in charge of the investigation, begged Jenny to call her parents and make any kind of contact. Her parents stayed by the phone waiting for any news. Detective Inspector Martin said that the investigators had been very encouraged by the response of the public to the investigation. People are willing us to find this young woman and return her to her family as quickly as possible. We are sparing no effort to trace Jenny and reunite her with her loved ones. Massive searches were being undertaken and no stone was being left unturned, but in spite of all of these efforts, there was just nothing. Then, the investigators discovered something that would give them a lead. Jenny had been seeing someone. David Hodgson was a married father of 2 in his 40s. They knew each other because she went to school with his 2 daughters. He had actually been grooming Jenny since she was in school, just 14 years old. David denied being in any kind of sexual relationship with her, but later confessed that he and Jenny had slept together on 5 occasions, but saying it was only after she turned 16. David and his brother Robert knew the area well, as they had built several hides and huts in the woods. David said he had never taken Jenny to them, but DNA evidence disagreed. Scientific evidence showed that the pair had had sexual contact in 2 of the hides. And 9 days after she was last seen, David was brought in and questioned. He said he was not having any kind of relationship with Jenny. The officers were very sceptical. The next day, a message was sent to her friend Jennifer. "Hi Jen, tell Jack I am okay. Know everyone's going to be mad. Tell them I'm sorry. Living in Scotland with my boyfriend. Shitting myself. Dad's going to kill me. Mum don't give a shite. Hope Nick didn't grass me up. Keeping phone off. Tell Dad car jumps out of gear and stalls. Put it back in auction. Tell him I'm sorry." Also that day, a message was sent to another friend, Nicola. "Thought you were grassing me up. Might be in trouble with my dad. Told Mum I was lying, didn't give a shit. Been to Keswick camping, was great. Have to go. See ya." These messages had been sent from around Carlisle. July 14th. A message came through to her dad. "Why do you hate me? I know Mom does. Told her I was going. I ain't coming back. And the pigs won't find me. I am happy living up here. Everyone hates me and rich. Only mate I got is Jack. Text you a couple of weeks. Tell pigs I'm nearly 20. Ain't coming back. They can shite off. She got me in this shit. It's her fault, not mine. Get blamed for everything. I'm sorry, okay? Just had to leave. She's a bitch, no food in and always searching me room, eating me sweets. Have to go, okay? I am very sorry. Kiss." This message had come from the Scottish borders. These texts did help alleviate some of the worry, as there had now been some degree of contact. For Anne, the messages seemed real and she decided to go and look for Jenny in the places the messages had come from, but she was nowhere to be found. Jenny's phone was not activated after those messages were sent, and it has never been located. These messages included personal information which would only be known to someone who knew Jenny, such as mechanical problems with her car and details with her friends, said Detective Inspector Martin. "I think that they were sent by someone else, someone who was close enough to Jenny to know personal details about her car, who was hoping to convince her family and friends that she was safe and well, when the opposite was in fact true." In cases where someone chooses to disappear voluntarily, police often uncover signs of planning, such as withdrawing large sums of money, arranging transport, booking accommodation, or making contact with friends to set up a place to stay. These small but telling details usually provide a trail that indicates intention. In Jenny's case, however, no such trail existed. There were no unusual bank transactions, no travel plans, and no steps that suggested she had been preparing to leave. No money had been withdrawn from her account, and she had also prepaid for a series of 25 tanning sessions, and she had only used 2. This reinforced the detectives' belief that her disappearance was not by choice. Whilst they looked into her relationship with David, then it would emerge that Jenny had actually grown close to David's brother Robert, and the pair had even gone camping together not long before she went missing. October 6th was Jenny's birthday. She would have been 20 years old, and Anne made a renewed appeal for any help by revealing a large banner to be hung up outside where Jenny worked. CCTV stills of her were also circulated that were taken just a few days before she went missing. On November the 3rd, the police announced that this was no longer a missing persons case. This was a murder investigation. That same day, a man did an interview with the Northern Echo, none other than David Hodgson. He said that he had been getting death threats after it had been revealed that they had been seeing each other. He said that she told him she was going to leave just before she went missing, adding that he had also lent her a large sum of money.
Let's see if we can get a result now in a case that is fraught with emotion, that of 19-year-old Jenny Nicholl. For 6 months now, her mum and dad in Yorkshire have been frantic to know what's become of her. And you must have been frantic when she just disappeared.
Well, I was. Nothing to suggest why she would disappear. She just didn't come home one night, and I didn't find her car until the Monday in the car park, as you just said.
She hadn't taken any money out of the bank, or she hadn't
Nope.
sort of taken a passport or made any preparation?
Still there, money still in the bank. There was no preparation for leaving home at all. She just didn't come back one evening.
Is that her teddy bear?
This is the teddy that her dad bought her on Christmas, and that went from the home maybe 2.5 months before she left.
So this is a replica, is it?
This is a replica, yeah.
With a little khaki suit on.
Absolutely,
so if anybody's
yeah.
seen that, we want to know about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
D.I. Pete Martin, Why have you come to Crime Watch on this now?
We've received some new information which now suggests the answer to this investigation is very, very local.
Very, very local, to Richmond in Yorkshire.
To Richmond itself in Yorkshire, yes.
And yet there were text messages sent on Jenny's phone from Jedburgh and from Carlisle.
Yes, there were, and I believe those text messages were sent by somebody who was very close to Jenny, perhaps even a boyfriend, with the intention of creating a belief that Jenny's still alive, which I don't believe to be the case.
You think she was murdered?
Yes, I do.
So either the killer or perhaps an accomplice deliberately tried to set a false trial?
That's right, yes.
Do you know the whole network of Jenny's friends? I mean, I don't know if you know all the friends she had. Very few people do of teenage daughters. Did you know everybody who knew her?
No, Jenny is quite a deep person and kept a lot to herself. So no, I don't know who her was.
You know some. Presumably you now need to get a complete matrix of everybody.
We do, yes. We're keen to trace all Jenny's friends, and in particular to find anybody amongst that circle of friends who visited the Carlisle and Jedburgh areas on the dates those messages were sent.
So far from this being a complete open mystery with nothing to go on, you've actually got quite a lot of pieces of this jigsaw puzzle already. Is that right?
We're just seeking the final piece now.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, if you can provide that final piece, if you have any information, call us here in the studio or call the incident room 01609 768 111.
As the investigations widened, they also examined her father's laptop for emails and contacts that Jenny might have, anything that could shed light on other aspects of her life, and possibly her state of mind. That avenue of investigation brought even more anguish to her family, when experts discovered thousands of child sexual abuse images on her father's computer. The day after the Crime Watch appeal, Brian Nicholl was in court, charged with making indecent photographs of children. The following May, he admitted 16 specimen charges at Teesside Crown Court and was sentenced to a community rehabilitation order. Police confirmed that the material was unrelated to Jenny's disappearance, but the revelation added to the family's suffering in the public eye. The 17th of January, 2006. David Hodgson and his brother Robert were arrested on suspicion of murdering Jenny. Robert was later freed with no charges. David was bailed pending further inquiries. Just a couple of months later, in March, it was revealed that the police had brought in a team of retired senior officers to review the investigation, hoping that they would be able to find an angle that hadn't already been considered. The 27th of March 2006. The police were still carrying out the meticulous fingertip searches across the countryside, and finally they made a breakthrough. There, they discovered Jenny's teddy bear and portable stereo, the first concrete evidence that placed her in that area after she was last seen. These were found at the Sandbeck Plantation, a wooded area off Longwood Bank. The police said that this was a significant find, and that tests were going to be carried out. Detective Inspector Martin said that both finds were important because they may provide us with significant forensic opportunities. The Sandbeck Plantation was a dense woodland, where David and his friends had built wooden huts to drink, camp and play cards. More than 150 acres were searched by police, and soldiers had also been brought in to help, and caves, shafts, moors and other areas were being looked at. Still, no sign of Jenny. It had now been 1 year, and 100 people turned out for a service at a local church. Jenny's aunt said in a eulogy written by her parents, "Quite simply, Jenny is unique. She is a young woman, our daughter, and we will carry her in our hearts and our minds forever. She is our wee Jen, and we will catch up with her soon, all being well." The police, though, were not taking their foot off the gas, and they were still looking into David. What they found was definitely raising eyebrows. Jenny had not been the only person to leave her home that day. David also had, telling his family he was going camping. He came back the next morning. On the days the messages were sent to her friends and her father from Carlisle and then the Scottish borders, David had hired a car, and his movements could not be accounted for. He also couldn't account for the hundreds of miles that had been racked up on the hire car after she went missing. A cornerstone of the investigation would be the forensic linguistics. Forensic linguist Professor Malcolm Coulthard had worked on several very high-profile cases. In a first for the region, he was brought on board to offer his expertise. He was given transcripts of more than 100 messages sent by David, 11 sent by Jenny, and the 3 messages that had been sent in July after she went missing. He said the interesting thing about the text messages is that they're very short, but because it's a new way of working, people partially make it up themselves. This makes text messages much more distinctive than other types of writing. The first thing he had to do was establish if there was anything to suggest that Jenny had sent the messages after she'd gone. One thing he spotted was that Jenny's messages and the ones sent after she vanished both used the number 2 to replace the word, but Jenny's messages would use the number 2 and then have the following word immediately after it. The ones sent after she went missing left a gap. Jenny would usually say I'm and I'm not, but these messages would say I am and ain't. Jenny used my and see you and phone spelt with an F. These messages used me, see ya, and phone spelt correctly. I was able to say that it was highly unlikely she sent those messages, he said. But did this mean that David was the sender? The professor used David's sample messages, plus the notes from the handwriting exercises that police had asked him to do. There were a number of similarities that immediately caught his eye. Off being spelled incorrectly with one F and not 2. He even had to ask an officer how to spell it during the handwriting exercises. Might was spelled M-I-T-E, and ain't and didn't without the apostrophe were also a match between his messages and the ones sent after she disappeared. The professor said that from a linguistic point of view, what I couldn't say was that he sent those messages, but what I could say was he shared a lot of the same features and was among a small number of possible senders. It was believed that he had attempted to mimic the way Jenny typed without understanding the subtleties and nuances of how she typed. They were now working on the theory that Jenny Nicholl had been murdered by David Hodgson on a camping trip, possibly during an argument or altercation on the night she disappeared. Though investigators weren't able to identify a crime scene, they then believed that her body had been disposed of in the woodlands somewhere. He had then sent the messages after he was first questioned to try and cover his tracks and make it look like Jenny was alive and that she had left of her own accord. For Anne, not knowing where her daughter was consuming every waking moment of her life. I cannot bear the thought of her being alone in the cold, wet ground in some makeshift grave. But what could have been the motive? Well, David was very jealous and very possessive, and if he even saw her talking to other men, he would grow increasingly angry. In May 2005, not knowing that Jenny was seeing his brother, Robert became close to her. A few weeks before she went missing, Robert and Jenny had gone camping. He had then tried to get in touch with her and made several attempts to get a response from her mobile phone, but he heard nothing. He later took police to where they had gone camping, but nothing was found. As she grew closer to his brother, David had become more envious and resentful. Finally, the news came that people had waited for. May 2007. 47-year-old David Hodgson was charged with Jenny Nicholl's murder. Robert Turnbull, the Chief Crown Prosecutor of North Yorkshire, said that this was an unusual case, that Jenny's body has never been recovered. I am, however, satisfied after careful and detailed consideration that there is sufficient evidence to establish a realistic prospect of conviction against Mr. Hodgson, and on that basis he should be charged with this offence. The trial of David Hodgson would last for 5 weeks, and it would be very distressing for Jenny's family. Her private life was put under the spotlight, and her parents were questioned by the defence over all parts of their family life. They would be reduced to tears by the experience and described it as a character assassination. Jenny's parents were unaware of her relationship with David, only discovering the truth when it was revealed at trial. David claimed that Jenny had run away from home to get away from her abusive father, an allegation that the judge would later say was made without the slightest shred of supporting evidence. Prosecutor James Goss QC said that it was the prosecution's case that David had murdered Jenny the night she disappeared and disposed of her body somewhere in the neighbouring countryside, with the intention that it should never be found. When it came to the text messages, the prosecution argued that they had been sent by someone who knew she was dead and was now trying to come up with a reason for suddenly going missing. They also referenced the records from when the car was hired. Where the messages had come from and the mileage on the car indicated that the miles driven fitted roughly with going to and from the locations. The prosecution said that this was not just a coincidence, but it would soon come to an end, and both sides would rest their cases, handing it over to the jury to reach a verdict. And in February, after 10 hours of deliberation, the jury agreed with the prosecution. David Hodgson was unanimously found guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 18 years. He showed no emotion at all. The judge, Mr. Justice Openshaw, said that it was obvious that the pair had agreed to meet that evening, and that the evidence David murdered her was entirely overwhelming. The defendant's concealment of her body has prolonged the anguish of her family and friends. I don't doubt that the thought she is lying somewhere upon the moors will continue to inflict further pain on her long-suffering family. The defendant has shown not the slightest regret or remorse. Jenny's parents later spoke out about their experience of being questioned in court, and they did so in support of the family of Millie Dowler, a young girl who was murdered by serial killer Levi Belfield. The Dowlers called for the justice system to be changed to protect families of victims from being re-traumatised by the process.
For us, the trial has been a truly awful experience. We have felt that our family, who have already suffered so much, has been on trial as much as Mr. Belfield.
And the Nicholls said that they felt the same. You see your family being questioned one by one about their lifestyle, every witness undergoing a character assassination, some of them reduced to tears afterwards, all the while the defendant sits there and continues to build on the fabrication, they said. They called for more support to be given to those giving evidence, adding that the system needed changing. In spite of the requests from the police, the coroner and Jenny's family, David Hodgson has never revealed how she met her death, nor where her remains are. As his case was referred to the parole board, it would bring Helen's Law to the forefront.
Helen's Law has come one step closer to being introduced today. It's named after murdered 22-year-old Helen McCourt and has been pushed for by her mother. Mari McCourt has never been able to lay her daughter to rest because Helen's killer refuses to reveal where her body is. Well, now Mari wants to see prisoners kept behind bars until they share vital details about their crimes.
The Prisoner Disclosure of Information About Victims Act 2020, also known as Helen's Law, was enacted in January 2021. This was brought in to ensure that if a killer refused to reveal the whereabouts of a victim's body, this would be taken into account when weighing up releasing them. Jenny's parents have never asked David where their daughter's body is. They said that they will not ask him because they will not be put at his mercy or provide him with any sort of feeling of being in control. Anne said that if he ever thought that continuing to deny it would somehow lead him to walking out of jail after his 18-year sentence, to continue his sham of innocence, he must now think again. His continual denial indicates that he is still a danger to the public, and any parole board hearing in future must now take that into account, she said. David Hodgson would later launch several appeals against his sentence, but these would not be successful. One of his latest parole hearings was unsuccessful, and the parole board cited Helen's Law, and that being the main reason it had been refused. As of the writing of this episode, David Hodgson remains in prison. This case was difficult for so many, including the police. Retired North Yorkshire Police Assistant Chief Constable Sue Cross said she thought of Jenny often and regretted that she couldn't find her. Silly things might happen, like a song coming on the radio that will take you right back to the case. You wonder where she is and if you missed any opportunity to find her. It would be wonderful if we could find her and give her back to Anne and Brian. The story of Jenny Nicholl is a devastating one. From the age of just 14, she was manipulated by a man who ultimately stole her future. We've seen in other cases how the absence of a victim's remains creates an unbearable limbo, and Jenny's family continues to live with that cruel uncertainty. Anne later spoke about the agony of what she and her family had endured. The hardest thing about not knowing what my killer's daughter did with her body is the thought that the child I gave life to, brought into the world and loved, has been thrown away like she didn't matter. Jenny did and does matter. Jenny Nicholl deserved so much more. She had her whole life laid out in front of her. Thank you all for tuning in, and we hope you found this video interesting. If you'd like to support our channel and help us to continue to make content, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. It helps us so much and we really appreciate it.